It's the perfect time of year to hunker down inside for a movie night or dedicate a weekend to binge watching a new series. There's no need to head out to the theater. Here are a few Netflix originals you've probably missed so far. Proving that 2019 is the year Netflix goes totally international, Justice tells the story of Farah, a young woman from the United Arab Emirates who studied law in the United States and returns to her home city of Abu Dhabi in order to practice. Her father is one of the top attorneys in the UAE, and he's pleased to see Farah follow in his footsteps. But there's a catch. Farah wants to work for herself and open her own practice, but her father wants her to work at his firm. In order to prove herself, Farah begins taking on intriguing pro bono cases, which are based on real cases that have gone through Abu Dhabi's justice system. With true-to-life characters who are caught between tradition and modernity, Justice gives viewers a peek into family life in the UAE, and the series is as educational as it is entertaining. Fatima Al-Tali's portrayal of Farah is sympathetic and relatable, and she makes the character's ambitious nature shine through in every scene. When a series kicks off with a theme song written by the legendary Leonard Cohen, expectations are going to be high. And from the intro sequence to the end credits, Black Earth Rising does not disappoint. Protagonist Kate Ashby is rescued from the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide as a child by her adoptive mother, Eve, who works as a successful international human rights lawyer. Kate eventually grows to work up side by side with Eve as a legal investigator. When Eve prosecutes a militia leader who stood up against genocide in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but now finds himself accused of crimes against humanity, Kate and Eve have to grapple with the difficult questions surrounding good, evil, and the complexity of morality, and where they stand in their relationship with each other.
I don't remember my family or my country. Nothing. I don't know my own name!
Black Earth Rising comes with some familiar star power in the form of John Goodman as Kate's employer, but it's not the kind of series you can zone out on. Each episode pushes viewers to think critically and refuses to spoon-feed answers to the issues it presents. In the world of Black Earth Rising, nothing is really black or white, and everything exists in shades of gray. The Icelandic film And Breathe Normally premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2018 to overwhelmingly positive critical reception. Now it's available for Netflix audiences everywhere. Laura is a struggling single mother living near Reykjavik who forms an unlikely bond with Aja, a refugee seeking asylum who is about to be deported. Laura is nothing if not stubborn, and she seems like the last person to accept help from a stranger. On the other hand, Aja has almost nothing to give, but somehow she offers Laura what little support she can to her, and Laura allows herself to be vulnerable and let Aja into her world. And Breathe Normally touches on several topics that dominate today's headlines, from Laura's attempts to disguise poverty as an adventure for her son to scenes in the refugee center where Aja lives in limbo.
Do you know how long I have to stay here?
No, I don't know. It's just a system.
This is not the side of Iceland that you see in tourism ad campaigns. The cold, rocky landscape is the backdrop for a nuanced look at this seemingly utopian nation. Combine the exciting fight scenes of a martial arts film with the tension of a drama series, throw in some supernatural elements, and you've got Wu Assassins. Kai Jin, a chef working in San Francisco's Chinatown, learns his true identity. He's actually the last of the Wu Assassins, a line of warriors tasked with using their powers to kill the Wu warlords. The warlords also possess magical abilities connected to fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. San Francisco is now under threat from the warlords, and despite Kai's protests that he's just a chef, he has no choice but to step up, embrace his new role, and fight against them. The high points of Wu Assassins are definitely the tightly choreographed fight scenes. This is star Iko Uwais' first TV series, but his previous work as a fight and action choreographer on films like The Raid definitely prepared him for this role. The show has received some criticism for its lackluster writing and pacing issues and a few rough special effects. But if it's renewed for a second season, the cast and crew has already created an imaginative world of interesting characters on which to build a strong sophomore effort. The follow-up to Medici Masters of Florence, Medici the Magnificent, takes place 20 years after the events of the first season and introduces several new cast members, including Sean Bean of Game of Thrones fame and Alessandra Mastronardi, who you might have seen on Netflix's own Master of None. Set in 15th century Florence, Medici the Magnificent continues to focus on the lives of Florence's most influential family, the Medici. After Piero de' Medici is killed, his son Lorenzo has to take back control of their family-run bank. Nicknamed Lorenzo the Magnificent, he decides to change the way his family does business, which stirs up trouble with Florence's other powerful banking clan, the Pazzi. Now, Jacopo Pazzi is dead set on bringing Lorenzo down.
A change to Rome may bring change to Florence. And with Piero recalling loans, there may be better ways of destroying the Medici than with a blade.
Fans will be happy to see this series return with fresh faces and an engaging new plot. Medici the Magnificent was certainly written for maximum drama over historical accuracy. But who wouldn't want to dive into centuries-old conspiracy theories about Florence high society for a few hours? Soni has already been labeled the biggest Hindi Netflix original so far, which is certainly an impressive accolade. Headstrong protagonist Soni is a policewoman in Delhi, a city where the justice system rarely gives women the benefit of the doubt. Alongside her superintendent Kalpana, the two have taken it upon themselves to investigate violent crimes against women. The women balance each other out. Soni is bold and hot-headed, while Kalpana always manages to remain calm. But when Soni is transferred out of their department after facing allegations of misconduct, their partnership takes a hit. Rather than veering into buddy cop tropes, Soni is an unapologetically feminist film with a thoughtful and honest depiction of the issues that women in India face. Between their very different roles at work and at home, Soni and Kalpana seem to live double lives, a predicament that will be relatable to audiences around the world. The Spanish horror film Ánimas is getting mixed reviews, but if you happen to be staying in on a dark and stormy night, it's the perfect movie to fit the mood. Written and directed by Laura Alvea, the plot of Ánimas is centered around Abraham and Alex, friends who struggle to maintain their close bond when Abraham begins dating his new girlfriend, Anchi. Somehow, Anchi's arrival into Abraham's life kicks off a series of increasingly strange and frightening events, from the death of Abraham's abusive father to Alex's unsettling and unexplainable visions. Ánimas falls squarely into the category of atmospheric horror. The flickering lighting, combined with the appropriately garish color palette, makes every scene feel a little bit like a bad trip. There's a pervasive sense of isolation that separates Alex and Abraham from the rest of the world, and it always seems like they're trapped, with no one coming to save them from themselves. A series that starts off by introducing a recently widowed protagonist who lost her husband in a car accident sounds like it would lean heavier on tragedy than comedy, but Dead to Me consistently dabbles in black humor in its depiction of grief.
Just can't imagine what you're going through.
Well, it's like if Jeff got hit by a car and died suddenly and violently, like that.
Christina Applegate stars as Jen, a young widow mourning the loss of her husband, who meets Judy, played by Linda Cardellini, at a support group, sparking an unlikely friendship. But Judy's unwavering support and carefree attitude might not be the saving grace that Jen was hoping for. When Jen invites Judy to live in her guest house, she quickly finds out that Judy tends to leave trouble in her wake, and her past is definitely catching up to her. Dead to Me could have gone for mainstream drama, but the raw, realistic portrayal of female friendship and appropriately dark quips and one-liners are what make it so binge-worthy. It dodges tired tropes at every turn and keeps you hooked right through the finale. With acclaimed filmmaker Ava DuVernay serving as the co-creator, writer, and director of When They See Us, it's clear that the series is a must-watch, and there's a good chance that it will turn your worldview on its head before the credits roll. DuVernay is known for her films exploring racism and the history of civil rights in the United States, like Selma and The 13th, and her skill at clearly illustrating how these issues still affect our society today. She continues down that path with this series, which is based on a 1989 case often referred to as the Central Park Five. When a female jogger was attacked while out running through Central Park, 5 young men between the ages of 14 and 16, 4 black and 1 Hispanic, were convicted of the crime despite a lack of hard evidence. All of them served prison time, but in 2002, their convictions were finally overturned when DNA evidence confirmed the validity of another man's confession. DuVernay actually refused to use the Central Park Five moniker in the series, stating she wanted the men to be seen as individuals. This dramatic expose of the criminal justice system is impossible to look away from. Hindi-language films and series are having a moment on Netflix, proving that there's more to India's film industry than Bollywood musicals. The series Typewriter is set in Goa, a region of India known by travelers for its popular beaches and quaint fishing villages. But when 3 aspiring young ghost hunters decide to explore a supposedly haunted villa, they have to confront the dark forces at work in their neighborhood. When a new family moves into the villa, the terrifying legends whispered about the house come to life. Curiously enough, the haunting itself seems to be connected to an old typewriter, and trying to remove it from the house proves to be a dangerous mistake. The young protagonists setting out to solve a supernatural mystery welcomes comparisons to Stranger Things, but Typewriter isn't just filler to hold you over until Netflix takes you back to Hawkins. The series stands on its own, and it's legitimately frightening. The overarching plot isn't particularly unique in the horror genre. It's undeniably binge-worthy. With only 5 episodes, you might be tempted to watch it all in one night. Be warned, you'll probably want to sleep with the lights on. They say that a dog is a man's best friend, and the Spanish comedic drama 17 proves that there's no bond like the one between a boy and his pup. Hector, a troubled teen who couldn't keep himself from getting dragged in front of a judge, has spent the past 2 years living in a youth detention center, and he's dedicated most of that time to trying to figure out how to escape. After training a therapy dog, Sheep, as part of a program with the local shelter, he finally begins feeling content. But when Sheep is adopted by a new owner, Hector decides he's had enough. Hector breaks out of the center and gets in touch with his brother and grandmother, enlisting their help to track down Sheep. Sure, they'll have to commit a few crimes and misdemeanors along the way, which has never bothered Hector in the past. Now, though, there's only one catch. He has 2 days before he turns 18 and can be tried as an adult. In 1988, police officer Thomas Lockhart's obsession with tracking down an elusive serial killer takes hold. Several victims in Philadelphia have bled to death from similar wounds, and Lockhart becomes convinced that if he can just crack this difficult case, he'll finally get to become a detective. But the mysterious suspect continues to thwart him for years on end, leaving him with nothing but inexplicable clues and dead ends. 9 years later, Lockhart has moved forward in his career and become a detective. A copycat killer strikes, and as Lockhart tries to connect the dots, he realizes that the details just aren't adding up. This is not just a serial killer at work. There's something bigger at play here. When Lockhart encounters his prime suspect from 1988 and sees that she hasn't aged a day, he dedicates his life to figuring out her identity, her motives, and whether or not she's from an entirely different time and place.
The more I tell you, the more you'll keep coming after me. And I've seen how that turns out for you.
In the Shadow of the Moon is a refreshing take on the typical police procedural, and the supernatural elements keep it from feeling like a carbon copy of similar narratives in the genre. The surprising conclusion explores complex moral issues and examines the true meaning of justice. If you're a huge Marvel fan and you just can't get enough of seeing superhero stories come to life on screen, the charming and occasionally nail-biting series Raising Dion might be right up your alley. Most popular superhero films follow well-known comic book characters in their adult years. But what were these larger-than-life figures like as children?
Oh, okay. Can we not set anything on fire?
In Raising Dion, a widowed single mother, Nicole, is taking care of her son Dion on her own after the death of her husband. And as if the overwhelming responsibilities of being a single mother weren't enough, Dion begins exhibiting magical abilities. He doesn't quite understand it, but he's a superhero in the making. Unfortunately, it's not all fun and games for Dion. Powerful forces are out to exploit him for their own ambitions, and now Nicole must enlist help to protect him. Plus, she needs to figure out how he developed his powers in the first place and what his future might hold. Beats is the latest feature offering from director Chris Robinson, who made his feature film debut with the drama ATL in 2005. Robinson is best known for his work directing music videos for artists like Alicia Keys, Eminem, and Nicki Minaj, and his knowledge of the business clearly informs the plot of Beats. Bonus, the soundtrack is packed with songs by up-and-coming hip-hop artists. August is an introverted teenager who is reeling after the loss of his sister. While he shuts himself away in his room and shirks his responsibilities, he throws himself into his only creative outlet, music. When school security guard Romello drops by his house to speak to August's mother about his absence, he overhears the beats August has been working on and is immediately intrigued by his surprising talent. Ro has a surprise of his own up his sleeve. He's also a music manager. And now, he wants to take August under his wing. But August's heavy grief and insecurities threaten to weigh him down as he tries to rise to the occasion.
You get that? I'm not good. Everywhere I go, I see it.
The story of a young underdog trying to break into a tough industry with guidance from an unexpected mentor isn't a particularly original concept in itself, but the characters and beats are the real highlight. August is sensitive and conflicted, eager to strive for more, yet fragile in the wake of his sister's death. Supporting characters, like August's protective mother Carla, played by Orange is the New Black's Uzo Aduba, round out a solid cast. From the very first episode of The Chosen One, you know that the outlook isn't promising for the main characters. After all, messing with villagers who would rather be left alone has been the downfall of protagonists throughout film history. A group of doctors is sent deep into the Brazilian wetlands to vaccinate the residents of an isolated village against the Zika virus. But despite the good intentions of Lucia, DeMaio, and Enzo, it's clear that they're not going to be welcomed with open arms. The villagers aren't just hostile because they don't want to be bothered by outsiders. They outright refuse to be vaccinated, insisting that polluting their bodies with modern medicine would cause them to lose the protection of the Chosen One, their local religious figure. The doctors must grapple with the burning questions of science and faith to dig up the secrets at the heart of this village and determine if something beyond their rational understanding is really at play. The acting in The Chosen One might feel a bit more reminiscent of a soap opera than prestige TV, but that doesn't detract much from the entertainment value. And with only 6 addictive episodes in its first season, it's easy to race through this series in a few hours. The Last Czars is that kind of rare show that's both entertaining and educational. This visually appealing historical drama series switches between fictional reenactments and documentary-style commentary to provide further context, which makes for an interesting format reminiscent of a History Channel program. It might not resonate with those who would prefer to simply lose themselves in the story, but you'll appreciate the extra background info if you're the type who often finds yourself Googling questions while watching period pieces. If your knowledge of Russian history starts and ends with the animated film Anastasia, The Last Czars might help fill in a few of the gaps. The series follows the life of Tsar Nicholas II, his resistance to political change, the ensuing revolution, and the fall of the Romanov dynasty. If you can let a few historical inaccuracies in the background slide, the royal scandals, intricate costumes, and intriguing portrayals of the Romanov family will more than make up for it. The names may sound familiar, but the series brings these historical figures to life in a way that explores their humanity. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.